Hey, y'all. Hey, man. Welcome, LinkedIn, YouTube. How is it going? Welcome to the High Vibe Zone. I am super, super excited for this particular High Vibe Zone. So let's warm up that comment box, that chat. Share with us where you're coming from, who you are, what brings you here. We are super excited to have you in the High Vibe Zone. This one specifically is probably one of the highlights to date. I've had so many amazing people, and I'm continuing this with someone that I just admire, I adore. Like I refer to him as like a mentor in culture. This guy is phenomenal, and I'm super excited for the conversation that we're going to have because it's one of my favorite conversations. My husband told me not to say this, but I'm going to say it. I'm either talking about culture or birth. He's like, how does that relate? It actually relates a lot when you think about it. So I'm going to be talking with my amazing guest about culture today. And so again, welcome to the High Vibe Zone. We are dedicated to talking about topics that raise the vibration, transcends the consciousness. Let's just bring some high vibes into it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest on, Mr. Stan Slap. I think that's too formal though. Mr. Is that too formal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the High Vibe Zone.
I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to probably have to massage my cheeks after all the smiling that I'm doing today because this is such a treat. So how have you been?
I'm good. You know, things are weird, but I'm good. Yeah.
I think that's a really good answer. Things are weird. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kick it off with our encouraging card of the day. And like I briefly shared earlier, I just shuffle the cards and pull out something. And I give you first word. Like, what do you think about it? And it's a really great, what I've seen is it really sets up the conversations, whatever the conversations are. The only time that it has not worked is when I was by myself. So I think there needs to be another person with this. With this,
I got you. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull our card for today. All right. Start here. Start today.
Okay, you just want me to riff on that, or what?
What is that? Yeah, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that we know about this uncertainty that we're all facing. Number one is that these tough times won't last forever, and number two, the story of how you stood up to them will. We can be living with that story for a long time. It's time to start writing it so it ends the way you want it to.
You would think that we prepared that. That was solid.
Now we have prepared nothing. I think that will become evident the further we go into that.
I like that, and I think what you said, tough times, they don't last forever, and that's true. That's a very simple way of looking at whatever you're going through. Nothing, in theory, lasts forever. So when you think of something being tough, that applies as well. For me, start here, start today. I think it's very interesting that we're talking about culture today. Like that's our main conversation point. And I find that there's a lot that companies and humans can do around that. So starting here, wherever this is, if this is the conversation that gets you started, start here. And start today. Don't wait. Don't look back, 5 years from now, 6 months from now, whatever that is, and be like, man, I wish I would have started. And that transcends into life experience too, which I want to learn a little bit more about, like where you started is, imagine if you didn't start, you would not be here today.
Fair point.
Okay, so let me get a little bit of I don't think I've ever asked you this question, but I'm very curious just to get some context to who you are. How did you grow up? What was that like? What was your experience growing up? What was that like for you?
It wasn't the easiest I mean, I'm not comparing myself to people who have truly tragic upbringings, but I grew up with a mom that was really sick. She was in the hospital for years at a time, and blew through first person and with my dad's insurance, who back then major medical was $1 million. First person in his company to blow through $1 million and bankrupt the family. And so I ended up living in foster homes and stuff, and for a long time till she got well enough where we could put the family back together. So it was a little weird, but it's childhood. You got what you got. So other people certainly had it worse. So I had two loving parents, and I'm the only child. They got it right the first time. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think any of what you went through as a child set you up for what you're currently doing right now in this space?
Yeah, probably. I don't think I realized that right at the beginning, but probably. I watched something befall innocent people. They were good people. They didn't do anything to deserve the fate that they had. That my mom's so sick, the family split up. My dad ruined financially. They didn't really deserve that. And yet it happened. And I think that's set up for me. And my mom was really a very, both my parents are strong. My mom was strong in business as well. She would have run a company, and that was just ripped out from underneath her. And just watching somebody denied their potential to be, I think that really stuck with me. And that's why I do what I do. So I think that the thing that drives me, the worst thing I think that one human being could do to another human being, short of actually killing somebody, is to make somebody feel small. To say you're not, you can't, you won't. It just drives me just insane. In any form of bias, social bias, abuse of management authority, companies acting like they're the state acting like it can dominate other states, just drives me crazy. And so the original founding purpose of our business was to make sure nobody is diminished by business, working in it or buying from it. Because if that happens to you in business, if you're made to feel small in business, anxious, uncertain, diminished in some way, that's not going to stay in business. That's going to jump the fence and follow you home. And those same people are partners and parents and neighbors and voters. The toxic impact of an anxious, uncertain population is incalculable. And cultures where the humans gather in business. So when we can reposition manager, employee, and customer cultures back to a company's newly precious workable assets, we cause a company to protect them, because a company will protect anything that's an asset, especially if they just learned how to get more out of it.
Right.
And you can't protect these three assets, manager, employee, and customer cultures, without protecting the humanity they represent and rediscovering your own or discovering your own as an enterprise. And so we're in business now to make the business case for humanity. And I think that's where that came from, that acute experience of watching somebody not able to realize what in any other circumstances they would have realized for themselves.
Yeah. That definitely ties a line to that, I would say. I love how you are like, nobody should be made to feel like they're less than. And that's, I think about that as a mom when I talk to my little human sometimes. It's like, nope, stop, eye contact. They will ramble and ramble. And something someone else told me very early on in motherhood was, if a kid gives you something, hands you something, receive it, because it's all they have. It's all they have. So I'll no one can see this, but I have a wall of all my kids. Like, they'll come in this office and start drawing, and I'll give them a space on the wall wherever it is, and this wall is almost covered, because I'm like, I won't reject it. And then I have a binder that I keep some of their things, and then some do make it in the trash, but they don't know that. It's like, I can't keep all of it, but it's that I see you. I see your humanness. It's so powerful. And I absolutely love sort of your origin story in terms of how that has really developed into something that you're doing. And I absolutely adore it, because humanity in the workplace, we need more of that. It's something that when business was being developed, it wasn't something that was like, oh yeah, let's throw in the humanity. It's like, let's throw in the profit, the metrics, this, but we need the humans to do all of that. And so it's just fascinating. I love what you said. So I think you touched on a lot of stuff. So I think want to go back, and I'd love for you to describe, as we're going into this culture conversation, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about culture? You mentioned it's where the humans come together. It's like, but what is culture? How do you define that in your own practice with your clients, just in life in general? How do you just define like that business culture?
Well, first of all, culture is the most overused, least understood concept in business. The example that we give is that in our company is that culture was Merriam-Webster's word of the year a few years ago. So that means, according to the most popular dictionary in the entire English language, culture was the most searched for word in the entire English language. And so we like to say, banana had made word of the year instead. By now, companies would understand what a banana is and recognize it's not going to peel itself just to feed you. And yet, companies really don't understand what a culture is. So here's the bottom line, just as a level setter. A culture comes into existence whenever people share the same basic living circumstances. And so they band together to share common beliefs about the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. So let's assume you were living in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And as far as you knew, you were the only person living in the jungle, because you never, with all your travels, never found another person living in that jungle. So what would be your daily, minute by minute obsessive concern? Was how to survive, right? Quality of life would be subordinate to quantity of life. And so you'd be constantly trying to gather information. What does this mean? What is this? Is this cave safe to sleep in? Is this water hole safe to drink from? Are there snakes in the trees, quicksand around the bend, whatever it is? Now, in that case, a wonderful thing that could happen to you is if you finally stumbled on somebody else living in the same jungle, because they would have all their experiences. And now you are exponentially safer, because you can match yours, then they can match. And so an even better thing would be if you finally found a bunch of people. Now you have all these experiences of people who share the same environment as you do. And then you can turn attention, once you know how to survive, you can turn attention to the quality of your life. Of course, if you have that many people together, somebody's going to want to be chief. That's just the way that works, right? So that's what a culture is, including a business culture. How do we survive all living in this same jungle, in this same tribe with the same chief? Yeah. And then knowing we're going to basically be okay, how do we get rewarded emotionally and avoid punishment? The key to understand about a culture is that it's not the way things are around here. That's a common inaccurate definition of culture. That stuff is just the currency of the culture. The culture is an independent organism living inside the enterprise, whose sole purpose, reason for existence, is to protect itself. So its motives are very pure and predictable. Yeah. And it will give you whatever you want. You just have to give it what it wants first.
That is a solid definition of culture. And I think I love how you went, you're living in the jungle, tribal, because there is this innate, anthropology about understanding a culture. And that definition is not something that I have heard other companies use in definition of like how they think about culture. It's usually, are my people happy? What kind of benefits do we have? Those types of things. Which
that very often doesn't mean anything to a culture. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Most
because
of what companies do means it's just like to a culture. A culture is going to ferret out what it needs to ferret out, and so. But again, once you understand that, what a culture is the simplest operating system in the world.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's a culture.
What do you think? How you brought up the banana analogy, which I thought was really great. Do companies that you work with seem to have a hard time retaining that definition of culture? Do you have to keep reminding them when you get in there?
No, I think once that epiphany light trips for you, everything suddenly makes sense. And we can say, so like, again, the culture's primary purpose is to protect itself. That's why it exists, right? So, it sets up everything. Like, why does a culture notoriously hate change? It doesn't hate change. It hates the loss of the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity that change represents because of how lame the attempt is to sell it. So, just to be able to tell a company that, listen, what you want your culture to do and how you want it done and why you want it done is never as important as why not. Given the corporate logic and urgency of any enterprise plan, why would your culture not fully commit to making that happen?
Right.
If a culture has reasons for everything it does or doesn't do. If a culture is not doing it, then it believes it's not safe and sane to do it, and it believes it has empirical data to prove that to itself. So you got to focus on the why not just keep banging them on the head about the what, how, and why. It's not that they didn't hear you. You talking louder is not really going to do it, right? So yeah, I think we're able to get that point across, and it's all of a sudden it just makes sense. Things make sense. Why things don't work when they should.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
that's very helpful. And I do hope those watching in the high vibe zone are taking some bad notes on this, because this is where it's at. And I think when I think of, I love efficiency. This is the most efficient way to get to the core of your culture quicker. And that also reflects in time and internally for your business. It's like, don't look at the stuff that's not going to get you there. Spending time on the topics and the conversations that aren't going to get you there. Quickly define and understand what culture is, and then respond accordingly. It's survival. And also, cultures are evolving continuously. And there's also another complexity is there's also this macro culture in our culture, just as the world, that also influences the internal culture, which is interesting. I do my best to explain to companies that some of the stuff or discord that happens within the culture sometimes comes from from outside the culture, and it's brought in because you can't separate the humanness from the human. So they're bringing in some of these feelings that are happening outside the world, and they're expecting this place to be safe enough to be able to either deal with it, process it, all different types of things. So what you said, I really do hope lands with anyone that's looking to enrich components of their culture. So I want to shift a second and talk about Slap Company. First of all, Slap is named after your last name, correct?
Yeah. I like the name so much I bought the company. Yeah.
Where does your last name come from? I'm curious.
It's Dutch. We're a simple people. We're a monosyllabic people. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your culture like at Slap?
Oh, who cares, really? You'd have to ask people, but I will tell you one thing is like, I don't get credit for anything I do. If I go, here's like a giving, beautiful human thing, they'll go, right, page 33 in the second book. We read that. Yeah. It's like everything I do is like calculated, manipulative. They're really just a bunch of ungrateful, bitter, really. No, we have great people. We do. We have great people. Everybody knows what we're fighting for.
Yeah.
Everybody is I mean, they're twisted beyond belief, but they are very soulful people. They are extraordinarily capable. We have something called the 3 C's if you're going to be in our company. And it was to my horror that I realized every one of these words starts with C, because it sounded like some lame HR initiative. But I was already stuck. So if you're going to work for us, work with us, we're going to work for you as a client, whatever it is, you cannot mess with these things. And the first C is character. Really, if you did not learn empathy and grace and accountability and positivity at your mama's knee, I feel sorry for you. But I'm not going to take the burden of teaching that to an adult, here, and we're not going to do without it. So you have to have character. You have to have competence. You got to want to be great at what you do. We only do a few things. So I make that very clear. There's more idiot than savant, but the stuff we do, we cannot be beat. Right. And you have to want to be great. And if you want to be great at something, that means you understand it's a constant process. It's a constant curiosity and openness to lessons from all. It's being self-critical in a very healthy way and open to feedback. So you got to want to be great. So you got to want to aim for that competency. And the final thing is commitment. We will, if you work for us, there's really no limit to what I will do for you. I mean, we're all in. And same thing for as a client. We just don't have those limiters. So I will expend any amount of energy for you. The one thing I won't expend energy on is reaching back behind me and dragging your whiny ass along with me. Okay. And that's whether you're a client or an employee or, any that we just won't do that. Yeah. So you have to have your own commitment. So I would say our people are absolutely rock solid character, competence, and commitment. I love them to death.
Yeah. I love the 3 C's, and you've just established, I should not be surprised. I'm more impressed. I just think that it's such a solid way of how you've done it. And I point out your culture to point out your people have been with you for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The only time that I've seen something like this in two areas, there's this steakhouse in Menlo Park, California, just for reference for people. I'm in the Bay Area. And Sundance, I believe it's called. And I remember going there for an anniversary with my husband. And we were talking to one of the guys that was helping us out and found out that most of the employees there had been there for 13 plus years. And some had been there for 20 years. And I was just like blown away. I was like, wait a minute, what? And when you hear hospitality, sometimes high turnover, they usually have a reputation for that. I was just impressed, and I was asking, like, what is it? And they're like, we are treated very well. We are, we act as a team, as a tribe. And like, they were sharing all of this stuff. And anyone that I asked had been there for a very long time. The second place that I noticed that people stay a long time is Trader Joe's. And I was very impressed with that as well. I would talk to some of the people there, and they're like, yeah, I've been here for 11 years, 10 years, 13 years. And I was just like, how do you get to a place where there's that much fruitfulness in the people that you have? Like that there is a reciprocity of mutual fruit bearing when you have someone that stays with you for that long. And so when I look at Slap Company, just knowing you, I'm just like, there's something very beautiful about what you've built. And I love that you are going to, I think you in your bio, it's like you work with some big ass companies. Like you're like, when I think about ships, it's like sometimes you have like the little, like, I don't know, waiter boat. Like you're working with some like straight up haulers, and you bringing this in is, I feel in my heart, just what you're doing is leaving a legacy of generational understanding of this is humanity in the workplace, and this is how you do it. And so I love everything about your mission and just you and your people, just to know that you guys have been there for a long time. So let's say you're giving advice. I'm very curious to hear this about companies that are like, we want our people to stay for this long too. We want the same thing that you have, Stan. How do they go about that? In a long or a short or as complex or as simple as you can say?
Well, simply like bottom line, I would say a couple of things. First of all, it's not the responsibility of your culture to understand the business logic. It's a responsibility of your business to understand the culture's logic. So get that first. Second is, and maybe this is first, because this is where I close every presentation, every keynote speech, every like with it is be human first, a manager second. If you just remember that, I mean, the stuff you're talking about the longevity of relationships and healthy relationships, why people would stay in a healthy relationship, because we all have our years of bad choices where we stay for a long time and just, working off some unending Sisyphusian karmic debt. But I'm talking about the healthy relationships. It's not any different than any other healthy relation. There's no mysterious book of rules.
Right.
You respect people. You realize that humanity is only dangerous and unpredictable if you don't start with humanity in the first place. Right. And so you make it a place where people can be who they are. There's no real secret to it. And it's true for employees. It's true for a manager culture. It's true for, so I guess that would be it. I mean, we can take as much time as you want on this answer. But fundamentally, there really is no secret to why a culture would develop into protective evangelists for you. And it is, if the culture believes that its environment is predictable, that's first. And it's fully energized and can take its own sense of self from its affiliation with the company's character and purpose and standards, and then you just allow people to be people. It's really not, you're not licensing chaos by doing this. You're ensuring control. There's, for the company to be a cause, it can't always be the first and only cause.
Right.
People's ability to practice true fulfillment and feel psychologically safe, emotionally safe, and productive and impactful must also be a cause.
Yeah.
I mean, there's right. So there are some lessons here, and we don't start that way typically. I mean, we basically say, listen, if when we're finished working with you, you don't really care about people any more than you used to, that you now treat them like you did, we still chalk that up as a win. Okay. But I think it's just a relief to companies to know that you really can do this. You don't need a different book of rules. You don't need to be different yourself as an executive than who you are outside the job. You don't. And we're not talking about soft stuff.
Right.
We're talking about the stuff of hardcore business results.
Right.
In my company, we've achieved billions and billions and billions of dollars of measurable performance improvement for many of the most successful, demanding companies in the world, the kind that we like to say don't include patience on their list of corporate values. And so we will make the business case for you. We will show you what happens when you ignite that culture. But we're only doing that to be agents provocateur, to get in there and mess you up.
You're going to mess up the whole show. I love it.
Yes, we are.
When you were talking, I feel like this is I want to talk about how we first met, because I will never forget, like, walking up to your building. Like, I remember everything. And I remember, so I had an experience at a company that I realized like I want to help companies realize that their humans are humans. And I was in people ops, HR, whatever it may be. So I decided to venture off and quit my job and start this culture circle journey. And I got some traction just because of some people that I knew. And I did a talk about humanity in the workplace, culture and tribe. And I talked about how the tribe and that tribal aspect flows into the anthropology, flows into workplace culture. And Stan, when I tell you, I didn't know shit. Like I knew a lot, but I didn't know anything about how to run a business. And I failed like so hard. But we were connected through Chris Redlitz. Shout out to Chris if you're watching, because he is phenomenal. The work he does is phenomenal. And I remember you giving me, I don't know how long we talked. It was a great conversation. And you said something to me at the end of the conversation. And you gave me your book, which I have. I have both of them. I think the first book you gave me, I want to say it was Under the Hood. I think it was this book. No, it was Bare My Heart. I'm going to show all the books. How about that? There we go. It was this book. And you said, keep going, don't give up. And I was just like, okay, like this was my beans and rice phase, Stan. Like I was not doing well, didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I wanted to do, but I just didn't understand business and consulting. And so you said something to me that I just never lost as I went through companies, as I worked on different components of culture, as I started to deepen my understanding in anthropology. And like what I kind of aspire to be a baby slap in terms of culture circle, because some of the stuff, and I know my tribe is watching, shout out to the tribe, is like we have very similar, we don't have the 3 C's, but we have something called the HUE, which is humanity. We use the best parts of our humanity. Ubuntu, I am because we are. It's such a powerful practice. And efficiency. We are not going to flail our energy all around. We know we're the most, we are guided energetically to the most efficient result and solution. And so while you were talking, I was just like, you are helping us do this with other companies, and you do a large scale, but we're working on the smaller companies. And I really do believe like this is going to take all the high vibe energy, all the positive energy to rewrite this notion of business culture. I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, I think we should stop using the word human resources because humans aren't resources, and just like, maybe we should figure out another word for that. Like, I'm like coming up with these random thoughts. I'm like, I think we should not use minorities because it's probably not a good thing to refer to people as. Like, can you imagine my little human comes in?
I think we ought to just stop talking and go to interpretive jazz dance. We'd actually be in a lot better shape.
What does that mean?
I mean, really, all these words carry so much baggage with them.
Yes.
It's amazing. And yeah, not just in this country. You know, we work in 44 countries. I have a whole team in Africa. We're in 12 countries in Africa, in Europe and Asia. And these things they're variations of the same stuff you're talking about in all of those countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe interpreted dance would definitely work.
There's like 5 hand gestures that work in every country. You can have an entire conversation, especially about the employee experience. Hand gestures.
Yeah, that also there. Yes, I understand that. I want to run something by you. I want to give you your thoughts on. I want to get your thoughts on this.
All right.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about psychological safety, or just like safety in general for a culture. The thing that comes up for me, and I know that I just can't get away from birth analogy. So I want to talk about the Finkster. Do you know much about the Finkster? The Finkster law?
No.
Okay.
No.
You'll catch on very quickly. So men have 2 Finksters, women have 3. And the Finkster is designed, let's say back in the day, a woman was birthing her baby in a cave and she didn't feel safe, or a saber-toothed tiger came around, that Finkster would close up. She'd be able to close up, pick up, and go birth her baby somewhere else. The Finksters have to do with the way that how safe we are when we talk. And it also has to do with, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's not formal, but like it has to do with how we poop. And as a birth doula, what I ask parents and families, well, mainly the woman birthing or the person birthing, is, can you poop in front of me? Because if you can, you feel safe. Your Finksters, they're all combined. So when I think about cultures and this whole concept, sometimes that has been more so introduced recently, is like having a seat at the table. It's like, it doesn't matter if you can sit at the table. It's like, is that Finkster safe enough for you to be able to speak out, speak up, and ultimately create a space where other people can feel safe as well? Because that Finkster won't create if your Finkster is closed, you don't feel safe. You don't feel. Also works with chewing, just so you know. Like, if you don't.
Thanks for that image. Okay, that's good. Yeah,
I kind of went all over the place with
that's good. It's good. Yeah. Okay.
But it ties into like what you said, the culture, survival and safety. But it also, when you think of like companies that don't have very safe spaces, people don't speak up. And it's because that Finkster is not, they're like, nope, they won't even be able to poop.
Well, the only thing I would say about that, to push back on one thing, is the culture is speaking up. A culture lives to communicate. Now, primarily it's communications amongst itself.
Yeah.
It's not intended for anybody. Culture is a closed society because it exists to protect itself. But its silence is its way of screaming at you. So there's no such thing as low voter turnout when it comes to a culture.
Yeah.
If you do some engagement survey, which, let's face it, is generally HR porn, it's not really any way of analyzing where a culture is really at. And you get like a 34% response rate.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You got 100% response rate.
Right.
66% of the culture is telling you it's not safe and worthwhile for us to respond to this.
Yeah.
It's definitely talking to you.
Yeah.
So never interpret silence as that the culture has nothing to say.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
But other than that, the whole sphincter thing, I'm with you. Yes. And yes. And sometimes I feel we come into companies and say, well, the first thing we're going to have to do is change your diapers. You can't just sit in that all day.
Right? No, you can't.
Formulate.
You're out of diaper changing stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you ever get past that, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I want to ask, what is your greatest, well, we kind of already talked about that. I don't want to ask that question again. Why do some CEOs care about culture and why do some don't? Does it come down to their humanity, or is it something else that you've
Sometimes
seen?
it does. Sometimes it's just naturally, it's how they were raised, and they didn't get the memo that you're supposed to do this, or they were mentored in some great way, or there was a circumstance where they just really had no choice but to bet it all on the culture, and the culture showed what it's really capable of. So in some cases there was some formative thing there. But yeah, in many cases, like forget for just a second about the pandemic and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's the beginning of another year. And so any company of any reasonable sophistication and intelligence looking down the road to the end of the year knows that culture is a thing. They got to do something about culture. They may not know what that thing is or what things to do about it, but by the end of the year, they got to be checking a box on some initiative or campaign or some other intensely, relentlessly useless thing. And so they know that that's a road that they have to look down.
Right.
And those same companies know the main road is company performance. That they're definitely looking down. And by Q4, they definitely have to tick this, and this in terms of metrics. But in most companies, they're parallel paths. And culture is considered this like feeder road, that small, fog shrouded, we don't even know where this goes road, subordinate to the main highway. And our whole point to them is collapse the paths. There's no better way of getting down the main road than bringing the power of an employee culture to serve you and save you. That's what's going to do it. Yeah. And there are CEOs that are very isolated. There are CEOs that let me answer it this way for you, because I work with CEOs all the time, and many of them are really impressive, as you know, you work with them too. Yeah. And many of them you want to say, listen, did you apply for your job or did you win it somehow? Because really, like, did you have to draw like a clown on a napkin? Like, how did you get this job? You don't belong in this job. And so there's a difference. There's a difference between a successful CEO and a great CEO. And the difference is legacy impact. And so that's why every great CEO holds himself to be chief culture officer and chief brand officer. Yeah. That's your customer culture, is deciding whether you're a brand. And they may have executives that they delegate the technical functions, but they're never too far away from that themselves. Right. And that protective evangelism of those internal and external cultures, maybe the company doesn't need it right now. Doesn't need it today, but it's going to need it someday. Every company needs it one day, and you can't bank it when you need it. You have to put it away ahead of time. So really understanding culture is not just a matter of achieving performance, it's a matter of achieving performance insurance. Even if you've already left the company when it's really needed, you put it into play on your watch. How many CEOs really get that? How many CEOs became CEOs because they understand what it really takes to run a company? If you're just looking at short-term quarterly analyst meeting to quarterly analyst meeting, you don't have to know this stuff. Got it. You can be in that position. So my long-winded answer to you is why CEOs don't get this, because just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you get everything. You got to learn this. Some of them just brought it naturally. Some of them had these profound experiences that really made this connection for them. And others just don't. So that's what we have to do. We have to make the connection. That's we have to, before we can humanize, we have to monetize.
What does that mean?
It means that we have to make the business case for humanity. We have to say, this is not some grand social experiment. The power of your cultures. If your cultures want something to happen in the business, it's going to happen. Right. If your cultures don't want it to happen, nothing's going to happen. Right? So, actually the argument that we use, I put it in the Under the Hood book. You remember Goldfinger, that James Bond movie? Yeah. Okay, so this iconic scene, he's strapped to the table, and there's a laser beam cutting into him, right? Yeah. He's frantically trying to negotiate his way out. Nothing's working. And the laser beam's getting closer and closer to reorging a critical part of his anatomy. And finally he says, just out of desperation, he's got nothing left. He said, if you kill me, they'll just send another agent to take my place. And Goldfinger said, hey, don't think so, Mr. Bond. And he said, can you afford to take that chance? And the laser shuts off. And that's what we say to CEOs. Listen, if the last 10 strategies, internal transformation, go to market, whatever, worked exactly like they were supposed to, cost what they were supposed to cost, happen when they were supposed to happen, did what they were supposed to do, you probably don't need to pay any more attention to understanding the true motivations of your culture. Right. But if you're betting your company and your own career on the next 10 or even the next one in a hyper-competitive, unforgiving market, can you afford to take that chance? So it's the industry term for that is scare the piss out of them. Okay. So anyway, I don't know why the humans do the things that humans do.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Humans are the variable. Can't always lock that down.
Humans are the variable. That's gently put. Yes. Humans are the variable. Right. We'll go
Yeah,
with that. We'll go with that.
we'll go with that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you have some amazing. Okay, I want to talk about these two books really quickly,
All
and
right.
I highly recommend that anyone watching that is curious about culture, that is trying to understand, that really doesn't want to fail in business, read these two books. So this one, Under the Hood, is about employee culture. Yes?
Yeah.
This one is about managers and culture.
Right.
Very my heart. I can't really tell you which one was my favorite, but both of these really feed off of each other. How did you do this? Like, how did you do this? I don't know if that's even a great
How
question.
did I write the books?
Yeah, like how did you come up with this stuff? I mean, I know the stories are in there. You have some amazing stories, by the way, which I absolutely love. But like, how did you come up with, like, this is like, if companies just followed this, didn't even talk to you, like they would be so well off in terms of culture. So how did you come up with this? Like, did you wake up one morning? Did you like go in the shower? Did you go on an ayahuasca trip? Like how did you get to this?
First of all, I haven't seen nothing I could see on ayahuasca that I haven't seen just generally working with our clients on a daily basis. So
Every day.
drugs would just be redundant. So no, it wasn't that. So all right. So I will make this as fast as possible. But so when we started in business, we were just a bunch of consulting sluts. We would do anything anybody asked for any amount of money. Really, people would say, "So is this what you?" Yes, that's exactly what we do. That's it. We do that. Really, we have to wear that outfit. We'll wear the outfit. Okay. I mean, now we are, of course, high-priced call girls, but back then when we were just sluts, we would do this. And but when we started the company, there were a couple of things I knew for sure. First of all, I wanted us to be a great company. Otherwise, what's the point of even saddling up unless you're going to do something great,
Right.
and do something to protect what must be protected and correct what must be correct and be renowned for your ability to do that. Right. And then I want to make sure that whatever we sold, you couldn't buy anyplace else. I was already bored with that. We're not going to fill out RFPs. We're not going to do that kind of next. What do you got? Yeah. We're not doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, blah, 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 blah. We had this mantra that I kept repeating, that nobody should be diminished by business, working in it or buying from it. And in our company, it just kind of became a thing. You know, we were just an unguided missile then. You know, we didn't really know, but we knew some of that. So we started thinking the company, as you know, you probably think in yours, like, who wouldn't love this? Everybody would love this, yeah. Right? So at some point it was like, you got to come out, man. This has got to be we got to really show the world because everybody's going to love this, right? Mm-hmm. So we had a client at the time who shall remain nameless, but which in fact was Oracle. And we were working Ray Lane was running Oracle. We were working with Ray and we were working with the executive team. And so there was a meeting at the Oracle campus and I thought, this is going to be it. We're going to rock your world. So they got the executive team in there. I said, listen, before we start, there's one thing I'm sure we can all agree on. And that is that nobody should be diminished by business, working in it or buying from it. And the room just stopped. And I thought, yes. And I looked at the guy across from me and he was going, I still remember he was going. It had stopped because they were trying to find the business relevance for whatever I was babbling about, and they couldn't find it. So yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so back to these numbers, and I've cast no aspersions on Oracle today or even back then. A lot of great people there, but I remember driving back thinking, this is of zero interest to a large profitable enterprise. How am I going to get this over? And that led me to culture, which is where humans gather in business. This is like 24 years ago. Even today, most about thinking about culture is wrong-headed from the beginning. Back then, nobody was even talking about it. So I thought, culture. We have a saying in our company, not so much anymore, but back in the day, born of ignorance, backed by science. So I just make stuff up because it makes sense to me. And then we expose the most ruthless due diligence possible, right? So I thought, okay, culture starts with a C and the culture. So I started reading anthropology books as a study of culture, right? And I've read like Levi Strauss, Margaret Mead. I read all that stuff. And it was fascinating. It still didn't give me a working hypothesis for this. So I started to come up with my own. Like, if a culture really was this, then this would be happening. Okay. So I thought, well, this is what culture is to me. I can't find it anyplace else. So I better give it to a renowned authority who knows the most about culture. So I'm sorry, I won't drag this on too much, but I typed it up and I sent a letter to the Oxford Department of Anthropology. And the letter, I wish we still had the letter, because the first sentence of the letter was, please don't hurt me. And I said, look, I know it's wrong. Okay. Right. Like, how could the chance some bonehead in a room in San Francisco pioneering a new definition of culture? I know it's like, obviously it's wrong. I just want to know, is this the wrongest thing you guys have ever heard? like, are there some vowels that could be said? Like, anything? So didn't hear anything, right? Waiting. Finally, I get this letter back. I thought it's going to be like the prison censor. It's just going to be, now, redact. And what came back is, we've never thought about the culture as an organism that way. But it is entirely valid anthropologically.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, I've got my own definition of, hi, Mom. Like, but of course we had a business model, I just had that. And that's where it started. And then from there, I had to turn it into a business model. And we went from there. But that's how it started. It started with the impetus to say, how do I make humanity important to a large, profitable enterprise with multiple stakeholders that demand fiduciary responsibility and financial performance?
Well, I absolutely love that story. And I did read about Oracle in books, which is great. That was a fascinating story. Definitely one of my favorites, because I grew up out here and I know what Oracle was known for.
Yeah.
They weren't known for the people back in the day. But thank you for sharing that, because it gives me a lot of hope. And not just in the work that my tribe and I are doing, but just in the world, to know that people like you, people like your people exist, because we have another generation that's coming up behind us, and they don't need the same crap that people have dealt with 20, 30, 40 years ago in the workplace. That's not what we're about. And in fact, that generation is very outspoken about that. So what you're doing is just so amazing. And I really do want to end with this component of what else do you want to say? What do you want to leave our High Vibe listeners with? And to tail end that question, how can people get in touch with you? So final words on what you're saying, because everything you said was fire. I just love this. Like, it's just everything that you're just light. And so say something to end us. I mean, I don't know. Like,
first, in terms of getting a hold of us, the company is Slap. The website is slapcompany.com. My email, which I don't usually just give out to people, but my commitment to you and your tribe is stan@slapcompany.com. So if I can answer any questions for you or help you in any way, informally or formally, it's what we do. I'm happy to do that, informally or formally. So if your desk appears to be melting and you're trapped in your office and you're wondering if a culture can smell fear, give me a call and I'll guide you out through the cubicles like the first Matrix movie, or we can suit up and do something formal. So let's get that out of the way. Okay. Here's what I would say to you is, if you ponder, which I would imagine surely somebody like you would ponder this obsessively, but for anybody watching this, listening to this, if you ever wonder how a human being, any human being, justifies the gift of life, how do you do that? Well, I mean, you practice empathy and kindness and respect, and you give back for the gifts that have been given to you, and you strive to make the world both a better place and not a worse one. Why should it be any different justifying the life of an enterprise? To be trusted to care about what matters most, let this be the defining grace of your company. And what matters most is your humanity. I mean, even in amongst the current global pandemic crisis, you can lose a lot of things as a company. You can lose some revenue, some market share. You can even lose your mind for a little while, but you cannot lose your soul. And there will be a time, I mean, it's already very clear this way, like what you do now will be remembered. Who you are now will be remembered much longer. Now you're going to have to answer for this to your company, to your culture, to your community, to your children. Who were you when everything inside and around you was finally tested? And this is why I'm saying be a human first, a manager second, and everything will be okay. That's what I got.
This is amazing. You already, I can't just tell you how much I appreciate you taking time out, being in the high vibe zone, sharing your thoughts, your stories. This message that you just left us with, fire, like amazing. And I just wish you and your team just abundance in terms of what you're doing, because Ubuntu, I am because we are. You know, what you're doing is so amazing. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh, you made, I smile from my heart, like whenever we just talk. So thank you so much for being here in the High Vibe Zone. Thank you to everyone that has watched live or the recording. I know you guys are probably just like jaws on the ground, like what just happened? This is amazing. Thank you guys. I'm going to send you guys out. Stan, don't go anywhere. I'm going to send out with light, love, and gratitude. And just wishing you guys a beautiful rest of your week. Thank you so much for spending time with me and Stan in the High Vibe Zone. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. See ya.
Oh.